Here is the plan a lot of new landlords are quietly running with. Buy the property, sign the papers, and get the keys. Have a tenant moved in 2 weeks later, right around the first, so the rent arrives before the mortgage really starts to sting. Clean, simple, profitable, and almost completely detached from how renting actually works. 2 weeks to find the right tenant is not a plan. It's a wish with a mortgage attached. By the end of this video, you'll know why that 2 week plan falls apart, how vacancy pressure can quietly damage your screening standards, and what you can do before closing to give yourself a realistic head start. A lot of new investors treat closing day like the finish line. Keys in hand, deal done, and the victory lap begins. But possession is not the finish line. Possession is the starting gun, because owning a rental and earning rental income are two different things. One quick thing, if you want practical landlord lessons without the 2 in the morning infomercial guy, hit subscribe. He's the one selling a $3,000 masterclass that promises any unit will rent in 24 hours. The day you take possession, the real work begins. The unit has to be checked, cleaned, priced, photographed, advertised, and shown. Then applications have to be reviewed, tenants screened and approved, the lease signed, and the move-in completed. And even if you sprint through every one of those steps, the hardest part is still completely outside your control. The right tenant has to exist in your market at the exact moment you are looking. Finding someone interested in the unit is usually the easy part. Finding a qualified person who likes the place, can afford the rent, passes the checks, is ready to sign the lease, and has a move-in date that lines up with yours is different. That takes time, sometimes a lot of it. Now, will some properties rent fast? Of course. Clean unit, good location, priced right, strong photos, listed at the right moment. The perfect tenant walks in on day 3. It happens. But day 3 should never be the number your deal depends on. If your investment only works when the property rents immediately, the investment is already fragile. You didn't buy a rental. You bought a coin flip with property taxes. A serious investor doesn't just budget for the down payment and closing costs. A serious investor budgets for reality. And reality includes vacancy, slow weeks, no-show showings, applicants whose paperwork doesn't match their story, good tenants whose move-in date lands 3 weeks after the date you wanted. A property manager can market the unit, field the inquiries, run the showings, screen the applicants, and handle the lease. What a property manager can't do is walk outside, clap twice, and summon a perfect tenant out of the hedge. If that were possible, management fees would be considerably higher. Now, here is where the 2 week plan starts becoming dangerous. A new landlord assumes they only have to carry the property for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of mortgage, 2 weeks of insurance, 2 weeks of utilities, 2 weeks of zero rent coming in. That feels survivable. But what if it takes 6 weeks or 8? What if the unit needs a deep clean after the sellers leave? What if you can't even take listing photos until their furniture is gone? What if the first weekend of showings brings interest but not the right person? What if your best applicant cannot move in until the first of the following month? That extra stretch of carrying cost shouldn't be a surprise. It should already be in your plan, because the most dangerous moment for a landlord isn't simply when the unit is vacant. It's when the landlord becomes desperate. Desperation quietly rewrites your standards. A so-so application starts looking good enough. A shaky reference becomes probably fine. The move-in date starts mattering more than the actual quality of the tenant. That's how 1 month of vacancy can create a problem that follows you for a long time. Vacancy feels expensive. Desperation is expensive. And let me be fair here, because this cuts both ways. If someone is still hunting for a place 2 weeks before they need to move, that doesn't automatically make them a bad tenant. People have real lives. Jobs relocate. Relationships end. A house sells faster than expected. A previous rental falls through at the last minute. An urgent move-in isn't an automatic no, but as a practical rule of thumb, the most straightforward applications are often easier to assess when the applicant has had time to plan. Urgency is a reason to ask sharper questions, not a reason to lower your standards. Why are you moving? When did you give notice? What happened with the last place? Can the income and rental history be verified? Do the dates actually make sense? Just make sure your screening process follows the rules. Urgency should make you more disciplined. The goal was never to get just anybody in. The goal is to get the right person in on the right terms once the unit is ready. Now for the one genuinely smart move that can make a tight timeline less unrealistic. Start before closing, not by treating the property as though it's already yours, by negotiating access in writing as part of the deal. A sharp buyer can ask for permission to take rental photos before closing, schedule a few pre-closing showings, bring a contractor through for quotes, or measure and confirm the condition. But all of that has to be agreed to up front. Who's allowed in? What are they allowed in for? And how many times? How much notice is required? Can prospective tenants or contractors come along? The access terms, advertising rules, and any existing tenancy obligations depend on the property and local rules, so permission should be explicit and documented. That's how experienced investors shorten the time between possession and getting the unit rented. They don't unlock the door on closing day and say, okay, now let's figure everything out. They run the rental operation in parallel while the purchase is still closing. But this matters. Even that doesn't guarantee a tenant by the first. It only improves your odds. Pre-closing photos help. Early showings help. A listing ready to go helps. A property manager lined up in advance helps. None of it changes the basic truth. The market still needs time to respond. The right tenant still has to come along. The move-in date still has to line up. So here is a simple planning rule. When you can, give yourself 6 to 8 weeks from the day you start advertising to your ideal tenant move-in date. That's a planning rule, not a guarantee. Sometimes it goes faster, sometimes it drags. But 2 weeks should never be the number baked into your numbers. Because when an investor says, I only need to carry it for 2 weeks, what they're actually saying is this deal only works if everything goes perfectly. Real estate doesn't reward people who need everything to go perfectly. It rewards people who leave enough margin for reality. So before you buy, ask the uncomfortable questions. What if it sits empty for a month? What if repairs hold things up? What if demand is softer than you hoped? What if the best tenant can't move in until next month? If those questions blow up the deal, vacancy was never the real problem. The numbers were. That's the lesson from start to finish. Possession starts the work. Preparing early can reduce the delay. Proper screening helps protect the investment. And 6 to 8 weeks gives the market more room to bring you the right tenant without forcing you into a panicked decision. A property doesn't become a business the day you buy it. It becomes a business when you start operating it with discipline. And discipline means refusing to let a calendar push you into a bad tenant, a rushed process, or a desperate decision. A vacant unit hurts. A rushed tenant hurts much longer. So if you take possession in the middle of the month, don't assume someone will be moved in 2 weeks later like magic. Maybe it happens. If it does, take the win. But build the plan as though it won't. Because 2 weeks to find the right tenant is not a plan. It's a hope. And hope doesn't pay the mortgage. For a head start on doing this the disciplined way, the free Landlord Systems toolkit is linked in the description below. It includes checklists for getting a unit rent ready, reviewing applications, and screening properly, so you aren't building your process from scratch during the same week you're sweating a vacancy.